topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in today on this busy holiday week. I'm Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to Winning Business TV and Radio on W4CY.com. We're streaming live on Talk4TV.com, in addition to Facebook, and that's at Winning Business Radio. And, of course, we're available after the live show in podcast form pretty much wherever you listen to your podcasts. YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, the list goes on. The mission of this show, as regular listeners and viewers know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, right? To learn best practices. Those are the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and hopefully to be inspired by the successes of others. Who are those others? Those are consultants, coaches, advisors, authors, founders and owners, leaders, entrepreneurs, people with expertise. But, virtually every successful person I've ever had a chance to talk to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. I say it every week, while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. I've spent the better part of my career equipping businesses to grow. That's from solopreneurs to small and medium-sized companies, all the way up to the Fortune 50. And I've seen those companies win, and to varying degrees, I've seen some fail. And I've had the opportunities to rub elbows with some of the highest performing people around, and some who probably should have found other jobs. In my own businesses, I've had lots of success, but some failures too. So I like to think I've learned a lot from those experiences. So yeah, you'll hear from me, but we really want you to hear from others. And that other today is Matt McGinty. He's the CEO of CareConnect. CareConnect is an AI-powered workforce optimization platform for home healthcare organizations. And he was a guest of the show back in April of 2022. So this is a welcome back. Here's his bio. Matt McGinty is the CEO of CareConnect, where he drives the company's vision, strategy, growth, and expansion. With over 20 years of cross-industry SaaS, that's software as a service experience, he's led sales, marketing, product development, and operations. Most recently, Matt served as Chief Revenue Officer for IntelliCare, where he led 15x growth across all commercial functions and helped the company achieve unicorn valuation status. He managed the creation and engagement of a nationwide network of millions of caregivers, servicing 85% of the accessible long-term care market. At CareConnect, Matt focuses on positioning the company as the go-to platform for caregivers and home care agencies, with a deep emphasis on AI and machine learning to improve outcomes for caregivers and enhance workforce engagement. Matt's professional goal is to be a respected, successful, high-integrity executive leader who sets and exceeds goals and expectations while adding shareholder value. He achieves this by enabling others around him to do the same through management, training, and active coaching. His ultimate aim is to build successful companies with double-digit revenue growth and winning teams. Matt is trained in leadership and organizational growth and holds both a BS in business administration and an MBA from Western New England University, where he serves as chairman of the board for the College of Business and as an adjunct graduate professor. When not focused on business, Matt's dedicated to being the best father and husband he can be, ensuring his kids have every opportunity to chase their dreams. He's also an active and avid cyclist, hiker, and Dave Matthews Band devotee. Matt, welcome to Winning Business Radio.
I knew Dave Matthews would sneak in there somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, actually, let's start with that. How'd you become a Dave Matthews fan?
Yeah, it's a funny story. These two posters, one there that's blurred out, one back there. Yep. So like a lot of us, you're lost when you're a teenager, right? This was September 3rd, 1994. And a friend of mine, I used to go to the music store called Strawberries from a town called Pittsfield.
Sure.
And I knew the guy behind the counter. We were good buddies because I spent whatever money I could steal from my mother's purse on CDs. And
She knows now.
she does. And he handed me these 2 tickets. He said, "You're always in here. This is tickets to the Horde Festival," which was Blues Traveler and a bunch of great bands.
Oh, yeah.
A place called Saratoga Performing Arts Center. And I went with a friend of mine and went all the way out there. I smelled and saw a whole bunch of things I'd never smelled and seen before as like a 14-year-old kid. I think I was there 15 or whatever. I forget what it is. And and Dave Matthews played at 3:05 in the afternoon or 3:15 in the afternoon. He was like a nobody. And I literally was just walked into the venue, walked over this famous bridge, and it's this beautiful venue in the Pines. And like there weren't seats, like you just walked right down into the shed because Blues Traveler or whoever the main event wasn't on until hours later. And I sat down and said, "Who the hell is this guy with pajama pants, and what the hell is this band?" And I just sat down. I can tell you the seat I sat in. I can just tell you I sat down and I was like, wow, just think about that point in the 90s. It was an odd thing for a ghostly white guy to have a band full of people that are a different color and a different background of him, and you had a
South Africa
saxophone, and you had this drummer who was like crazy, and you had the violinist just like swinging his dreads, and like you're like, what the hell is this? I just kind of fell in love with it, and it in many ways saved my life. Because you're as a teenager, you're trying to find your way. You can make a lot of bad decisions, and I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't gamble. So I guess my worst habit is I spend money on concerts.
And so that's been a long time. How many concerts? I think you know the number.
It's over 250, but it's like
Wow.
150 with the full band. But then there's him and his guitarist, and then festivals I don't count. So a lot. Now the coolest part is my daughter's into it now. So
I saw a post. Yeah.
I go with my daughter, and now she's a little bit of a groupie. The guy who plays the keyboards always looks at her because he's right in front, and she gets set lists and gloves and sticks, a whole bunch of cool stuff that never happened
That's
to me.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
it's fun to see
totally
your
cool.
kids adopt it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. Tell us about I'll get to Stephanie in a second. Tell us about Haley and AJ, your 2 kids.
Yeah, I just walked out of, I'm freezing right now. So if you see the fleece shirt, for those watching, I just got out of a hockey rink. My daughter had her first varsity hockey game. So that was a lot of fun. She's a freshman. So, playing varsity hockey as a freshman she played great. Didn't make any mistakes. Perhaps was a little tight because she didn't want to make any mistakes, but played really well. Team played well.
Nice.
Gets a really good team, and she's at Ursuline Academy, and then AJ he's a junior at Zavarian Brothers High School division.
We can say state champion Zavarian Brothers.
I was just gonna say state champion Zavarian Brothers High School football. He's football. He plays across track and cross country, but he was one of those guys in the freezing cold with a white shirt on, screaming for Zavarian a couple weeks back.
That's
so.
cool.
It's just such a great school. Both are great schools because they're brother sister schools, one in Dedham, Westwood. But it's good to see your kids be able to. It's good to be able to, provide that for your kids so that they can go out and live their dreams. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. And tell us about the lovely Stephanie.
Yeah, I think she's downstairs somewhere taking care of our new dog. Steph and I have been together 29 years. Truthfully, she's been struggling with a lot of health challenges the past couple of years, and I probably shouldn't be saying this in a podcast. She'd be mad at me, but teaches you a lot about perseverance and teaches you a lot about what's important in life and that life is short. But I think like a lot of folks, I would say like be careful what you put in your body. So I think what happened with COVID had some adverse effects with a lot of people, and she's one of them. So, but just living day by day, trying to help her get healthy and trying to raise her kids. And it's always a trip, man. It's a journey.
Yeah, my wife has long COVID for sure. It's like kind of vascular thing that affects breathing, but all good aside from that. So you grew up in Western Mass. Tell us what it was like to grow up in Western Mass.
Yeah, I grew up in the place where things like plastic and electricity, modern electricity, and night skiing were born, and Moby Dick was written. I'm a little proud of where I'm from, like most people are from there. A town called Pittsfield, Mass, on the border of New York and Massachusetts. Yes, Moby Dick was written there. Yes, night skiing was invented there because Jack Welch wanted his executives to be productive. So he gave free lights to the ski mountain in
I did
town
not know that.
so that the executives would ski at night and not take days off. True story.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, Pittsfield is well known for being at one point, I think, number 3 and number 4 on places that Russia was going to send a nuclear weapon because they made all the guidance chips for nuclear bombs during the Cold War. So
Wow.
General Electric was big there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a cool place to grow up because you had this, kind of vibrant business community surrounding General Electric, but you also had this like really gritty, kind of blue collar town. But at the same time, the arts is really big in the Berkshires, and you have Tanglewood that is the next town over. So I don't know. I'm a little biased, but I couldn't have asked for a better place to grow up than the Berkshires of Western Mass. I still own a house out there, and I'll tell most people that's actually my home. This may be my home in Eastern Massachusetts, but that's really where the majority of my friends are and my home is. So I love it out there. Couldn't ask for a better place to be.
And for a large part of the audience that's not in Massachusetts, Pittsfield is about 2 hours from Boston. So it's due west, and it's, Massachusetts is probably bigger than, it's still a smaller state, but it's bigger than I think others give credit to. So, all right. So you are clearly a business guy. How'd you get involved, or interested rather, not involved, interested in business?
Yeah, it's a good question. My dad was an accounting teacher at Pittsfield High School, and he also ran a bank. He was a treasurer of a credit union and was a banker before that. So, I think he bestowed this, kind of, deep understanding of business into all of us and money management. And I was probably the worst at that. It's funny now that I manage these large budgets. What goes around comes around, and my dad is laughing at me from his grave.
That's funny.
I just, believe it or not, I was going to be a lawyer for a while. I was going to do the 3+3 program at Western New England University when Bill Clinton was president. He was funding people to get a law degree under the National Labor Relations Board. So I was going to be a lawyer for a while. As you know, I'm pretty good at winning an argument. But I wanted to be on the business side of law, like really understanding how to craft deals and how to, how bring people together. And that was leaning towards that side of law anyways. And then, a little thing called the Balanced Budget Amendment happened in 1990. I'm going to date myself, so I'm going to stop talking. And they kind of cut funding for that program. So I just stayed in the business school, and I was really pumped up about a couple things. I say pumped up, and most people don't get pumped up about this, but probability and statistics, I really enjoyed. I had a teacher called Nancy Pelosi. She was awesome. Another great teacher named is Peter Hess, who passed away years back at Western New England University. And he taught a class called Performance Team Leadership, where he came in, gave us goals, and he said, all right, I'll see you at the end of the semester. I'm in my office every day, put us into teams and made us figure it out, gave us a thesis, gave us a why, and made us figure it out. And I think that's really where I kind of fell in love with business, because you know me well enough. We've known each other almost 20 years now. That I don't really like to be told what to do. And what I thought was really awesome about that setup is we had to form a team quickly. We had to find out what our strengths and weaknesses were quickly, because we all came from different backgrounds, and we had to figure out what the thesis of the project was and how to be successful. And then more importantly, how to use him, right? He was trying to teach us, like, use me as much as you want. We used him a ton. We got an A. Other people who just screwed around the rest of the semester and then handed in a paper at the end and didn't do well. So you realize that, like, really good leadership isn't about micromanagement, but it's also not about, just putting your finger in your head and telling you did it wrong. And he really provided this nurturing yet, kind of entrepreneurial environment to operate in. And then, kind of understanding the statistics side of it was awesome too, because you then learn how to make decisions based on the subjective and the objective. Those two classes together really made me love business. And then I worked at a place called Investors Bank and Trust, the typical intern place to work when you get out of college, a finance company. Met some great friends, realized that the last thing that I wanted to do was work in finance because it's so slow. And actually I had a friend of the family who said, you should be a sales guy. He's like, you have a way of working on the technical side of things and have a way of listening to people and figuring out how to pull those together. I really kind of sound like what's his name from Office Space when he says I'm the people person. I saw that, and then I got into technical sales, which is when I met you when I was at Fast, and that was a unicorn exit in 2007. And I say that I've been really kind of chasing those $1 billion. My first startup was $1 billion exit, and I've kind of been chasing that ever since. But it's been a fun ride going along the way.
Well, we'll get back to IntelliCare shortly, or get to IntelliCare shortly. Last question before the break is, what made you choose? I know you're really involved, and we'll get to that too. But Western New England University, what made you choose that school?
Yeah, I initially was going to try to go to a school to play lacrosse, and that was one of the schools that was on my list. And then I was like most people, leaning sort towards some big university or something like that, probably ego. Then I realized the big university was just going to swallow me up and spit me out. I came from a small high school called St. Joseph Central High School in Pittsfield, Mass. Multi-generational McGinty to go to that school. My aunts, my uncles, my dad, his siblings, the whole 9 yards. It was the very last McGinty to graduate from there, and then it closed down a few years ago, which is pretty sad. But I had 78 people in my graduating class, so I just I was committed to go to a larger school and to try to play lacrosse. And I was like, wait a minute, this is going to gobble me up. So kind of the university spoke to me. My brothers are 13 and 14 years older than me. They were out here in the Boston area, and I'm from Pittsfield, and Springfield's kind of the perfect middle ground, and beautiful campus, similar, bigger size, obviously class, but certainly classes were comparable, and just kind of fell in love with the whole environment. And I was still going to play lacrosse. And then I hurt my knee in my very last game of my high school career, and ended up trying to recover and just never did. So I decided, why not enjoy school? And I know this is a podcast, so probably should maybe drink a little beer and have some fun. And I probably took a little bit too much of that, but I wouldn't change it. Ended up getting 2 degrees from there, a master's degree as well. And anybody who's thinking about a university, AACSB accredited, same thing as Bentley, Babson, Bryant, and really getting, you get scrappy, that type of university. It's a beautiful place, and the people there are just the best. They care. And I think that's what I love it about the most.
That's great to hear. All right, we're going to take our first break. Everybody, we'll be back in just about 1 minute with Matt McGinty of CareConnect.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamt of being on the radio? Well, now is your chance. Be a radio show guest on the #1 ranked internet radio station and promote you and your business for free. Yes, you heard it, free. Business advertising right here on W4CY.com. Call 561-506-4031 now to get booked on one of our shows. That's 561-506-4031. Get your free advertising now.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
All right, we're back with Matt McGinty, CEO of CareConnect. Matt, you got your MBA pretty early.
Yeah.
What was behind that decision?
Competitiveness, and I don't want to give too much of coaching to folks because, again, unsolicited advice, but we are having this conversation.
Sure.
I probably in hindsight would wait a little bit longer. That would be my advice to people who are on the younger side considering it, particularly since I was in school, which is a long time ago now.
Yeah.
It's now become more of a checkbox. Like when I was in school, it wasn't a checkbox. So I did it to push myself. To be honest with you, I got through college without having to work very hard. It kind of came easy to me. Again, having a school like St. Joseph that really got me ready. And I think I was an underachiever in high school, but by the time I got to college, I was like, wow, like this is easy compared to high school. And I wanted to have the balance. I did a lot of things on campus. I was like, ran the peer advising program and orientation group leader and like all the funny acronyms you can come up for what you'd have on a college campus was me. So I really enjoyed like the being part of the campus, so, when I did my MBA, I think somebody said something to me about, I was the only person, my middle brother gave up on his MBA a class or two short. And somebody made a smart ass comment, to be honest with you, about me and doing something like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go get my MBA and I'm going to ace it. And that's what I did. I got my MBA and I aced it. So it was a little self competition. And, man, I tell you, when you're, getting started in business and working full time, and I was traveling all over the world, actually Norway and a bunch of places with a company called Fast I worked at, it teaches you a lot about discipline. And discipline is freedom. Jocko Willink, if anybody's read that book, Extreme Ownership, Discipline is Freedom. And I think that's really where I first learned it in college as an orientation group leader for Dean Zern, who worked at Western New England. He had a level that was here in terms of expectations and being exceptional, and not being perfect, but being exceptional and really putting hard work. And it planted a seed in me that then when I got my MBA, you're like, wow, discipline is freedom. If I can get my brain working faster and be more effective and efficient, that actually gives me more freedom to do the things I love to do. So for that purpose, I wouldn't change a thing. But I did it there because, a true story, the dean, I was going to go to Bentley, and the dean found out I was going to go to Bentley, and he called me. He said, "You're not going to Bentley, you're going here." He was a good friend of mine. And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm going to Bentley or Babson." And he's like, "No, you're not. You're coming here. We have this new hybrid program where it was online and it was in class." This is way back when, 12 years ago. And he's like, "I want you to try it and give me feedback." And so it was great because, it was something new and it was different. And by the way, it taught me a lot about how to work remotely, because I had 80 people in 32 countries reporting to me at that time. So like that was normal for me to work in that environment. So it helped me with that. But what you missed was all the networking you get when you're in person. So like it was an interesting experience for me. I would probably wait if I was most people, kind of how you can then apply it more. I've applied it later, definitely accounting and finance and those things you applied right away, probability, statistics, but kind of the network. I think my advice to people is think about what you want out of it, right? Like if you want the network, if you want that, then, kind of pick that environment. If you want to build that foundation that you feel like you're missing, maybe I didn't pay enough attention in accounting class, which I think my best man and roommate is listening to this at some point and he would tell me I didn't, then, that it's good for those types of things. So I don't know, it was, I wouldn't change a thing, because I wouldn't be where I am today without that. And not one of those people that looks back and tries to change the past because you can't.
Same.
But, it's interesting. I would definitely tell kids that are just trying to do it because they think that's what you have to do to check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that's a rap quote there, because you're going to be then doing it for the wrong reason. And you're not going to get the right things out of it. So don't do it unless you want to either build the network or build those foundational things that you think are going to help you get there. But just having an MBA doesn't get you anything. There's plenty of people that I read resumes for, or they put comment MBA after things, and they're doing it to have the comment MBA. They're not doing it. I never talk about it. As a matter of fact, I think you're the first time I've really been asked about it and talk about it ever. So, for me, I did it for me. I didn't do it for somebody else to see me. Let me put it that way. So.
Great answer. All right. I want to take you through a few of your roles here, just not the company or, like Fast, but you were global director, technical sales operations.
Yeah.
And I just want people to know, what did you learn from that 3-4 years you were there? I mean, that's a big question.
No, it defined me, to be honest. Like it defined me, and in particular, a number of mistakes I've made since then. Things that I'm really aware of. I think the thing I learned the most was startups are really hard. But also
not the faint of heart, I always say.
No, definitely not for the faint of heart. But, in a tech sales role, so I'll give you one specific answer, and I think it ties to our relationship quite a bit. I remember the first time we met, a friend of mine invited me to one of your seminars and said, "You got to check this out." And I was like, "Sure, I'm in." And, I was probably your most difficult person in the room, and I'm understating that when I say that. And I remember what you said to me. You said, "Can you just do me one favor? because you're probably sick of me at that point. And I said, sure. And he said, the next time somebody asks you a question on your next call, just say, that's a great question. Why do you ask? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I leave your seminar, free pizza or whatever. And I go back to my office just a couple miles down the road, and I get on this call, and it's a big book publisher. I won't say who they were. And we were very late in this deal, and it was pretty large. It was a multi-million-dollar deal, and we were at the very end of it. And at that time in enterprise search, we were definitely afraid of security questions because enterprise search, they didn't have the best security. So you could basically scan everybody's laptop and expose stuff that's on it. And that was scary to people. And it was so early on in that tech. So they asked me a question. Now, mind you, they were going to be on a public website, but they asked me a question. They said, Matt, tell me about your security standards. And I literally think I sweat through my shirt instantly. And I said, shoot, to myself in my head. And I said, well, that's a great question. Why do you ask? And I waited, and I was like starting to come up with my answers and like, oh my God. And he said, I'm just curious. I don't really need to know the answer. We're on a public website. Security doesn't matter. And I was like, I probably would have spent the next 12 weeks proving our security standards and jumping through hoops. So I think that moment, that role taught me that customers don't always, it's okay to manage the customer. It's okay to be inquisitive and try to understand the context behind their question. It's not important to just always answer the question, particularly without knowing the context. So I think that role, I thought my job was as a sales engineer, tech problem, tech solution, tech problem, tech solution, tech, and that your confidence in being able to answer those, and that completeness in your ability to answer those was the measure of whether they would do business with you. I think I learned that was total BS. And that ultimately where success really came from was curiosity. So I think that's the thing that role taught me. And then starting as a manager, for any of my former employees that are listening to this, that were my employees at Fast, I'm so sorry. It was such a big like I was driving so hard, so fast, so much perfection, so much everything that you kind of learn over time. And I have a couple other life events, like almost dying a year and a half ago, whatever that was, that you're kind of like, wait a minute, like there's other ways to go about doing this. So I think curiosity, and then, how to be a better manager, not just trying to drive results all the time, but there's humans on the other side of that, and how to do a better job on that. I reflect back at that and think, man, I was a bad manager. So I think those are the things I take out of it.
We all grow. All right. And then you were an entrepreneur. You had an opportunity to buy into a franchise, had a pretty good run. What was your key takeaway from that experience? And then we'll go to commercial. Yeah,
extreme ownership, right? When concept didn't exist at that point from Jocko Willink, the book didn't exist. But, when you're, and I know this is, ironic when I say extreme ownership about owning a business, but, you have to do everything. So I think it teaches you about marketing. It teaches you about sales. It teaches you about customer success. It teaches you about networking and the whole 9 yards. And until you own a business and have a new mortgage and have a new baby, you don't really understand life. And I'm sorry if that offends somebody. It's not meant to be offensive because everybody has their own life experiences. I think when you have to, your output literally in that day is taking a spoon and putting it in your new baby's mouth, and it is putting it in that mortgage account. I think it taught me a lot about extreme ownership. And look, we went from the last to some of the top 2 or 3. And of course, my friend John beat me on a regular basis, and I always tried to knock him off the pedestal. But again, but that was about the team. We built an incredible team, and people that still have worked with me since then that aren't from fitness, like Jim, who has come to me with me at other stays. And I think that's where I really started to learn about building those relationships and the team. Now, the team ultimately is what delivers success, because you can't be everywhere, right? You've got to teach them how to have their own extreme ownership within their role, so that when something goes wrong, we all look at each other and say, like, no, it wasn't you. I could have picked that up. I could have done that. No, it wasn't you. I think we created that culture. And that's the first time I really saw it. And it reminded me of like sports when I was a kid. And what that feels like being on a high performance team. Love it. Good answer. All right. We're going to take our second break. We'll be back in just about 1 minute with Matt McGinty.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
All right, we're back with Matt McGinty, CEO of CareConnect. And Matt, I'm going to read off some titles. I know you know your titles. Just for the audience, VP of Sales Strategy and Customer Success, then COO, then Interim VP Sales, then Chief Revenue Officer, then Senior VP Global Sales and Account Management, and then Chief Revenue Officer once again at IntelliCare. Let's pause there.
Yeah.
Second time at reaching a really landmark of unicorn. Talk about how you got there. The what I took out of your bio and what people heard, you led 15x growth across all commercial functions, helped the company achieve unicorn status. So tell the audience, what is unicorn status?
Yeah, unicorn status is when the company reaches a valuation greater than $1 billion. I think that's when the market values it that. I want to be very careful, though. I think people throw that term around a lot. Unless you somehow sell or convert that value for the shareholders, $1 billion is only good as the piece of paper it's written on. So I'm pretty, I try to be humble when I talk about that, because I hear people talk about, building unicorns and those types of things. And I think, unless you create $1 billion of value on the other end of it, we did certainly for a while. But kind of maintaining that and expanding that, it's a hard thing to do. And it's a verb, it's not a noun. So, that's important. But yeah, it was a fun ride again, all about the team at the end of the day.
Amen. All right. Let's see. One more question before we get to CareConnect, and we'll spend the rest of the time on CareConnect. Yeah. You're a big believer in training and coaching, and I'm not looking for, this is not directed to me. So if the audience knows me pretty well, those that know us together know that you've brought me into, now I checked it. It's almost 20 years, this is the 7th company that you brought me into. I'm very appreciative, but I'm not going for that. I'm simply saying, you're a big believer in training, development, mentoring. Why should other leaders truly and meaningfully invest in their team and leaders?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because nothing else really matters. Right. People can debate me about that, and I'm open to the debate, but we spend more time with our teams at work than we spend with our families. Right. And if you don't want to go to war with those folks, to be in the trenches with them every day, maybe war is a strong word, but if you don't want to, go to the office, and whether it's remote or in person, and want to be arm in arm with somebody and build something, right? Like, that's what's so important about it. So, I ask a famous question of everybody in an interview, and anybody who's listened to this who has worked for me will know I've asked the question, and I've kept a spreadsheet of every single person I've ever interviewed. It's thousands now. And it's still, I add this tally to the bottom. And I've kept it since 2004. I think it's like Office 97 or something like that, or 2000, the version that started it. I asked one question, which is, do you like to win or do you hate to lose? And there really isn't a wrong answer. It's how you answer the question. Because, at the end of the day, we all like to win. The question is, are you willing to do the sacrifices for the team to get to the outcome? And to me, those are usually people who hate to lose. So I'd say I hate to lose. And if you hate to lose, you realize that we're always in this constant state of learning. If you're always in a constant state of learning, you can't be teaching yourself. You have to get outside feedback. I just went through, a couple of years ago, pretty intense executive coaching. Great woman named Tammy Jersey, another person that changed and evolved my life at a time when a lot of things were going on. You're coming off of COVID. I had an injury that almost had me die of sepsis, like all those things happen at the same time. And it really helps you reflect. So part of it is timing of when you do these things too. And I think, being an athlete, I was never a good one, but being an athlete and hating to lose and always wanting to get better. Now what I've realized is you've got to be really disciplined about building a culture that does that. And if you don't have a culture of people that want to get better, you have a culture of a whole bunch of people who want pats in the back. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of companies like that out there. And they're great companies. They're just not mine. I want to be very clear. I need to get better. I expect my team to tell me how I need to get better. I seek outside input about how to get better on a daily basis. I ask that they do, and they all do on their own, not because I ask them, right? Because that's what they want. Like, hey, how can I do this better? This call better, this. What's your feedback? I just went through a meeting this morning. It was like, hey, we put this together. We know it's not perfect. What's your feedback? And it's like, this is exactly what I wanted. And you have a bunch of people that say that, and they, more importantly, don't just say that, they live that. Like, they literally come in wanting to sponge it up and evolve, because life is compound interest. There's a great book called The Compound Effect. If you haven't read it, everybody should read it.
It's right here. Darren Hardy.
Right now. Life is about getting 1% better every day. And if you get 1% better every day, the compound interest on that, we're thousands % better in certain time periods, right? Because it's the compound interest of building on top of each other. And that's why I seek athletes when I hire them. When I say athlete, you don't necessarily have to be a sports athlete, although I think they get this concept out of the gate better than many people. But business athletes that are really inquisitive about evolving and getting better, because business doesn't stay still. No company we've looked at, Amazon is no longer a book company. Barnes & Noble doesn't even exist anymore. Really, it does. But you know what I'm saying? Like, malls don't exist where you go shopping. They don't exist. Everything is evolving, and you can either be a part of the evolution or you can be left behind.
That's totally right.
If you don't be left behind, you got to be learning constantly and evolving and trying things and failing, and not being afraid to, and just, kind of keeping the ball moving forward.
Great. All right, let's talk about CareConnect. You describe as the go-to platform for caregivers and home care agencies, with a deep emphasis on AI and machine learning to improve outcomes for caregivers and enhance workforce engagement. Tell us more about CareConnect. Yeah,
I gotta stop letting my marketing team do these answers.
That was off the website, by the way.
Yeah, they do a great job. At a simple level, nobody gets into anything in post-acute healthcare unless you really care, right? So I think first of all, to say what CareConnect is a lot of people who care. And what I mean by that is, my dad passed away in a nursing home. Before that, home care. My mom was his caregiver as well. Nobody gets into this part of healthcare unless you care about it. So, I'd say that's the first part about CareConnect is everybody cares. But the other problem is there's a lot of turnover in this space, because a lot of folks just get burned out. I mean, dealing with the elderly or individuals with disabilities, it's really hard, right? And that problem is ballooning. It's this huge balloon that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and we're not kind of making any progress on this at all. If you look at the rate of disengagement in home care and home health, it's up to 80%. That means 80% in a year of people who join that profession or were in it in the beginning of the year are churned by the end of the year. Just imagine your college professors going back to college for a second. 80% of them churned every year. Let's look at the NFL, right? Which is certainly a performance-based business. Imagine 80% of every NFL team look completely different the next year, right? Like, now that's what it's like in healthcare, in home care and home health.
Yeah, that's hard to succeed.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we're using AI and machine learning and tech platforms in order to help people solve problems with recruiting, retention, and engagement. So how do we use software and services to help them find caregivers? And then how do we have the right tools to show them work in a way that work is the mirage in the desert that they're chasing after, not, kind of compliance. I think in healthcare, there's so much compliance. We all feel it, right? Walk into a doctor's office. Unfortunately, how I beat up my body, I'm in an orthopedist office, I feel like every week. And every time you have to fill out a form, right? You have to sign a HIPAA form. You've got to write this off. You got to write. The space is full of compliance, right? The nurses, imagine being a nurse or an aide or a CNA or whatever your role is. If you're feeling it as a patient, imagine how they're feeling it with every patient they deal with. right? So compliance is so hard, and that's what exists. And there's this kind of antiquated way of looking at things where it's like we have to keep doing it the way we always did it because that's what works. But that clearly isn't what works. 80% churn. And it's really ripe for technology where the supply is not growing at a rate that exponentially matches that of the demand, right? So after COVID, I think none of us watched TV and thought, let me send my parents or loved one to a nursing home. And by the way, no disrespect, because I still work in that space, and they are just the most selfless people.
They are, absolutely.
Did an awful job to that industry. So basically, government, in their good intent, and I won't make any political statements, basically said, like, people should age at home, and we're going to set the whole system up so people will age at home. After that, it was already not keeping up. And there's just no tech in that world, or limited tech in that world. And, our co-founders, great guys, came out of a company called Sandata, good friends of mine, great leaders, brought me in to help with this. So I'm really carrying on a vision that they started. This concept around, we have to make it easier to get people working. We have to remove all these redundancies. Why should you have to go take the same, test to go work at 3 places when you've already taken it? It's so you wonder why Medicare and Medicaid are out of control. It's like that same caregiver has to take the same 3 tests, and our tax dollars are paying for that. It's wildly inefficient. So we're solving problems around that with compliance, getting them working with hiring tools like applicant tracking systems, and then automating the scheduling process. Think about an Uber within a home care agency. You can very quickly use the tech to manage or match the best caregiver with the right aid or aides to meet that care plan. And then how do you complete that circle by, making compliance for them doing their job more integrated into their work, not somebody putting their finger in their head or taking away money or, beating them with a stick and 5,000 emails and calls. Like, you haven't done your training, you haven't done this. So, we're trying to bring software and services to market to help this industry, which is largely neglected, but the government is like, go there. But the market isn't fully developed yet. And we see this as an opportunity for us to give back and help.
So we're providing services to the agency side of the business. Those are the ones that employ those caregivers. Describe this is maybe a little unfair, but just for the audiences, describe a typical home care agency.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of very large agencies in New York. So they will feel like big business in many ways, where they have all these different departments and groups. Most of them, though, across the country are mom and pops. They are folks that were either a nurse or they were an aide at one point. They got great care from a nurse or an aide for their loved one. And they were like, hey, I know these nurses and aides. I'm going to start an agency. And they signed up and they did all their courses. They did everything they needed to do. And they get reimbursed by Medicare and Medicaid, depending on if it's home health, home health is more skilled. That is nurses, PTOT. And then the unskilled side is somebody to sit with mom and dad, blood pressure checks, and basic things like that. That's the unskilled side. That's more home care. Most of them are these folks that just did it because they cared. They don't have software tools. They don't perhaps have all the experience on the business side of it. They don't know how to do billing. They don't know how to get reimbursement from the government for these types of things and how to go about doing that. So, that is ripe for technology to come in and say, like, you don't have to hire 5 people to man the phones to get a caregiver to go somewhere. I mean, this is what, technology that's in our hands and we use every single day already does. Let us give you that, because the healthcare system now is really set up around having the same person. I think what I've, learned since the IntelliCare days. So IntelliCare was a tech-enabled agency. They were about getting the caregiver in the right place, the right time. It was more, I don't want to say transactional, because there was a lot of care in what the folks in IntelliCare did and all those aids that they did. But I think, kind of what happened post-COVID was the government looked at things and said, hey, we want the same caregiver providing care, because we find hospitalization is lower when the patient sees the same person and feels comfortable with them and everything else. So that's why what's nice about CareConnect is we work with those agencies to give them those tools to essentially build their automation engine to allow people to come in and out, rather than having to seek an additional outside agency to help them do that, which adds more layers. And in a market where your margins are single digits, there's just not enough dollars to split. So you can get them the tech and get it in their hands. They don't have to split those dollars. They can then spend the time not making phone calls and texts, but spend the time helping with the care plans, helping the patient have a better experience,
Mm.
and help the caregiver have a better experience rather than mundane scheduling tasks or hiring tasks and things like that.
And who are those caregivers?
Yeah, they're unskilled caregivers. They're the folks, like, if you've seen somebody sit down and spend some time, if they get a care plan, it's happened to all of us, where sit down and come in and check on your mom or dad, or anybody, see how they're doing. Some basic medical things, how to use a Hoyer lift, things like that. They're the equivalent of a CNA that you would see in a nursing home, is what an unskilled caregiver is. But what people forget is, because you're trying to keep the healthcare costs down, they're trying to use the skill level that is required of the unskilled caregiver, and the skill level required by a skilled caregiver has just gone up. So just think about, I don't want to date you, Kevin. I know how old you are. You know how old I am.
Yep.
A nurse does probably 100 times more than a nurse did when we were kids.
Yep.
Right. And a physician's assistant didn't exist when we were growing up. Like, you saw the doctor and he was in your town, and you went to your sporting events sometimes. Like, totally different world that exists now, where a lot more is being required, going down the skill level to try to keep the costs down, because these baby boomers are growing at a rate that is faster than the tax base is allowing to do it. Well, I don't want to say the tax base. I'd say the tax base has definitely grown a lot. Our efficiency of how to use that hasn't been. There's a lot of people pulling on those dollars. So, this is the right time to help these unskilled caregivers become skilled, keep them in the industry so that they want to become nurses. So right now, a lot of these unskilled caregivers tend to be immigrants. They tend to be, people that aren't sure they want to work in healthcare, and they're testing the waters. We should give them all the more reason to stay and want to evolve in that market, rather than choose things like an unskilled caregiver could potentially make more being a greeter at Walmart. That's a problem we have to fix, right? This has to be a profession that you can grow in and want to become a nurse, or or be able to find enough work as a caregiver because you're fulfilled by that, not have to choose to leave the industry, because that is just creating this revolving door problem.
And tell us about consumer-directed care, caregiver choice.
Yeah. So, there's two things there. So caregiver choice, there's something called a consumer-directed business in New York. So I don't want to confuse people. That is where it's called CDPAP business, where the consumer is basically.
But it's an interesting trend.
Yeah, very interesting trend. It's actually kind of evolving in the state of New York, where it's moving back towards the license agency to create more accountability, because during COVID, unfortunately, a lot of people use these government programs and defrauded them. Billions of dollars have been defrauded by folks. Where we help right on that side is Caregiver Choice, though, is an automated scheduling platform. So think about it, your Uber and Lyft, where the caregiver is basically saying, here's how I want to build my schedule. And the Uber equivalent I will give you is, if you've ever been in an Uber, ask them if you're their first or the last ride of the day. And what Uber is doing is stitching together these rides in this radius that the driver wants to do, right? And it's learning what the driver likes to do and what time the driver is going to end their day. And usually the ride that they pick up, Uber knows that's their ride to get back to their house, right? So there's this kind of circle you essentially do, or zigzag you do to get back to your house in Uber. That's what Caregiver Choice is. So we're allowing the caregivers to speak up and say, here, let me build my own schedule and tell the agency when I want to work. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing in cross post-acute care, whether it's home care, home health, or even long-term care where telecare works. These caregivers really care. And they really, really pulls in their heartstrings when they get a phone call saying, come on, Mrs. Smith really needs you to work that.
Yeah.
And you may have already worked 12 hours and you're like, another 2 hours, 14 hours, right? And they'll end up doing it because they care. But what ultimately happens is they're burning out. They eventually just say, I can't do this anymore. I can't always be an emergency, or can't always be pulling on the heartstrings, because we all have to have balance in our life, right? I'm probably the biggest hypocrite in the world talking about having balance in my life. But, we all have to have that. So I think that's the problem, and Caregiver Choice really solves that. Let the caregiver's voice be heard of when, where, how they want to work, so that you're not sending them a million texts, phone calls, and emails saying, can you work? Can you work? Can you work? Because what happens is humans will always go back to the human that they trust and give them the work, where the machine will learn their habits. And what I like to tell people is what they look at isn't as important as what they don't. A caregiver who doesn't want to work, has never looked at a weekend visit, clearly doesn't want to work a weekend. So stop beating on them and asking to work a weekend. And what we hear all the time is, well, they filled out their hiring form and said they'll work weekends. Yeah, but they were looking for a job. They maybe embellished their desire to work a weekend a little bit, right? So instead, we notice the people that are looking at weekend visits versus the ones that won't, and we kind of really cohort those groups and really use the AI to show them visits. But maybe the person wants a Tuesday night, we can cohort those groups. So you have much smarter scheduling that then you leave the human care coordinator to deal with those really hard to match cases rather than a lot of volume and you're not having a lot of quality. You let your humans for the interaction work on the quality rather than the volume. So you don't have this, again, ballooning problem with churn in the market.
That's a good explanation. All right. Believe it or not, last question.
Wow.
Who, I know it goes fast. Who in the listening and viewing audiences, should reach out to you and why?
Yeah. First of all, I believe at one point I was at many points in my life, I've had this indiscretion. So I won't just say at one point where, maybe I didn't have the right focus on people the way I should have. I tend to go fast. I tend to be type A. I make this mistake a lot and I have to check myself. And the one book that checked myself is a book called The Giving Tree, right? So I think my brother put that in front of me when I was a teenager and as a guidepost to how to live your life. And look, I fail at a lot of things, but when somebody calls me and asks me for help, I don't think you'll ever hear me say no. So I'd say, first of all, if you want to know all the mistakes I made, call me, because the list is way longer than the ridiculous titles that I've had that are meaningless unless you have people around you that want to be around you at the end. And I'm really blessed at CareConnect that I have a whole group of people that I've worked at many different stops that just represent this team of selfless people that have a desire to learn and just put the customer and each other at the center. And I really mean that. I'm just so freaking excited about this team and how selfless they are and how awesome they are. I'm just really humbled to be able to come to work every day and serve them as their servant leader, right? So people want to know all the mistakes I made or want to push me on them and tell me about all the mistakes I made. Send me a note, matt@careconnectmobile.com. People want to understand the startup world and, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly associated with that. I'm happy to listen to those folks. People, again, I'm on the board of my university and I'm still an adjunct professor. I don't have time to teach right this moment, but, people who want to kind of understand those decision points and the good, the bad, and the ugly of, how I made a decision around those things or what the options are out there. And certainly, folks that are in the home care industry, we certainly would love to talk to them. Me, I'm not a big push salesperson, but there's a lot of home care agencies out there that are small, medium, large that need help around trying to solve this problem of 80% churn. I had somebody say to me once, "Oh, ours isn't that bad." And I was like, "What time is that?" They were like, they said, "This isn't that hard." And I said, we're 3 minutes over.
Yeah, we got to go. Right. So listen, he's Matt McGinty. Sorry.
Amazing.
CEO of CareConnect. We could have spent another hour on this. This is great. I'm sorry we didn't have more time. Reach out if you feel like you want to share something or you might need their help. This is a show about business and business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me at kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Join us next Monday, December 30th. My guest is going to be Eliza Josette, inventor of the Spherehead Pillow, the founder of Spherehead LLC. Until then, thanks for joining, and this is Kevin Hallinan.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.